wonderful to see that people are still walking in. And I know that I'm competing with Lost, the final last two episodes. So I'm going to try and wrap up before you have to get there. Otherwise, I hope you're DVRing it or TiVoing it. Thank you, Nape scholars, for imagining me on my deathbed. And thank you for imagining that I will be speaking with any coherence as I approach my final hour. Thanks also to my friend and colleague Eric Lane for agreeing to help out with the PowerPoint, because one of the many things I fail at is multitasking. And thank you, Dave Madsen, for telling me that this lecture is done best if it comes not from here, but from here. That gesture you made with your hand stayed with me for a while. It told me that I probably could not bring in all those wonderful charts and graphs from my scholarly research, those impressive statistical analyses that got me published and fattened up my tenure file, all those brilliant words that I have put out there that tell me that I'm smart and successful. Stripping ourselves of all theory, research, and data is a frightening exercise. So thank you for sending me on this free fall into thin air. Your invitation to speak from my heart couldn't have come at a better time. This past year, I have been, as you mentioned, on a post-tenure sabbatical, which should have been a time of feeling some amount of contentment, some sense of accomplishment, and a time to build a map based on all the routes that have proven to be well worth my travel. Instead, I have actually spent my time losing, failing, and feeling terribly foolish. For one, apparently, I lost my power to spell correctly, as you probably noticed from the title of the talk that arrived in your email the first round, before it was quickly edited. My colleague and friend Mara Edelman was kind enough to think that the misspelling of the word intellectual was deliberate, because it worked so well with the declaration I was making in the title. But no, it was just what it is, an unforgivable failure. So, of course, we must just leave it up there for a moment to heighten and spotlight my shame. So, as I was saying, the invitation to this talk has come at the precise time at which I have steeped myself in what it means to me to fail. Why have I done this? For one, because I have had that terrible thing called time on my hands. And because time has taught me that every joy I feel today and every intelligent thought I have had in my head has arrived on the unseemly wings of failure. One of my earliest memories is that of failure. The odd thing is, at that time, I was smiling at that word, failure, because I had no idea what it meant. And to me, as a child, that word had a nice ring to it. Failure. I will tell you more about that memory in a few minutes. I want to flash forward into the present, because what is front and center for me right now is failure. You see, sometime at the beginning of my sabbatical, I finished a project I have been working on for about 2 years or so, a novel. It's a 321-page work of literary fiction set in a place nobody cares about, among people that don't look very good. Now, for those of you who foolishly believe what I believe, that writing is just writing, and a journalist who writes news and features can turn into an academic who writes scholarly papers, can turn into a novelist who writes fiction, here's a newsflash. No, we can't. Of course, there were those that warned me about this. Why do you want to go struggling with a new thing when you've just earned tenure for doing what you obviously do a decent job with? Why don't you spend your time leveraging on what you know, rather than go free-falling into what you don't know? Why are you being so foolish? Well, there are two reasons for this foolishness. First, as I will reveal through this lecture, I find great power in foolishness. As an educator, a passionate advocate for journalism, a writer, a mother, a woman, a feminist. Second, I didn't start out on this new project being foolish. As is often the case, foolishness sort of claimed me. For instance, I didn't start out trying to write the story as a novel. I started it out as a journalistic story, and then as academic research. The story in the novel is based on the chilling reality of farmers in present-day India. These farmers are committing suicide by the hundreds of thousands because of poverty and failed government policy. So sometime in December 2007, I went off to a remote village in the drought-prone Vidarbha region of India and stayed a few days with some of these farmers and some activists working with them, just as I had done several times as a journalist. But more than farmers, I met widows. Women who are farmers themselves, but were brought out and photographed as weeping widows of the men who had committed suicide. I began to realize that not only was there very little journalism about this issue, with the exception of a handful of really intrepid and wonderful journalists like P. Sainath and whom we had brought here to campus a few years ago, and Dion Butcha and Jaydeep Hardikar, but these are just a very few handful in the whole, sea of journalists that exist in India. So not only was there very little journalism, but most of the stories that got out there were driven by drama, in which women had tears on their faces and were looking woefully to the skies. I began to realize that I couldn't tell the story journalistically. I also wouldn't be doing justice to the people who had given me their time if I wrote about this in an academic paper that would add another layer to my scholarship file, but which, let's face it, very few people would actually read. So I came back home and was sitting on my living room floor and going through the photographs I had taken in the villages of Vidarbha, and something made me stop at this one. I remember this woman. She had asked as many questions about me as I did about her. What is she doing here? She asked the people with me. Where is she staying? How long is she staying? Where has she come from? All those questions that can fill anyone with existential dread. And then, when she paused long enough for me to take her photograph, her stance seemed to be a question in itself. She seems to be asking me, so, you think you can tell our story? This woman made me nervous. So nervous that I forgot to write down her name. Now, my journalism students will tell you that it states on my syllabus that I give them an automatic F for spelling people's names incorrectly. It's an unforgivable sin for a reporter. Well, what would they say about me entirely forgetting to take down this woman's name in my notebook? So, as I looked at this picture, it dawned on me that one of the outcomes of my not having her name was that I was going to write down her very factual life as a piece of fiction. Now, I did say that I would not quote any people, rely on any theorist or any wonderful, well-known people for this, but I was reminded earlier of Albert Camus' statement that fiction is, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but fiction is a lie that we tell in order to get to the truth. So that was playing in my head too. So you must be asking yourselves, where exactly is the failure? Here it is. No one wants to take on the book and sell it. My mailbox is filled with letter after letter of rejection from agent after agent. I have started to dread the mailbox at home and the inbox of my email. This one is a classic. I am going to read it out to you so that you can feel my pain. Dear Sonora, thank you for your patience as I've spent all this time considering your lovely novel foreign. You are clearly a talented writer. There is much to be admired in these pages. I found this novel this is the good part. I found this novel deftly structured, fast-paced, original, and full of characters and themes I found both fascinating and innovative. I really love the way you explore the intersections between Indian and American culture and the techniques you use to trace the effects, politics, economics, and the act. I just realized, shouldn't that be effects? Yes. It's an agent. Politics, economics, and the agricultural industry, or as you so aptly say, our mad rush toward globalization.